Good afternoon. We're here with Robert Edsel, who's founder and chairman of the Monuments Foundation, and Anna Bottinelli, who's president of the Monuments Men Foundation. I'm Ben Lima from UT Dallas at the Edith O'Donnell Institute of Art History, and we're here to talk about provenance research. Thank you both very much for being here.
Welcome.
Hey, Ben.
I think many people will know a lot about the great activities of the foundation over the years, but I wondered if I could just start by asking a little bit about the current priorities and activities that the foundation is engaged with.
Sure. Well, Robert founded the foundation in 2007, and the main objective at the time was that of finding the monuments men and women that were still alive, interviewing them, preserving their stories. As you know, oral histories are invaluable, and the greatest generation every day matters to record the stories before they're gone forever. So Robert was in a rush against time to find as many monuments men and women that were still living. He did find and interview 21 of them. And so, of course, all of this research went into 4 books that Robert wrote. One of them, The Monuments Men, became the Monuments Men movie with George Clooney and a stellar cast. Then the Monuments Men and Women had never been honored and recognized. So the Monuments Men Foundation and Robert, above all, spent more than 9 years walking the halls of Congress to make sure that a bill would be passed that would honor the monuments men and women with the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest non-civilian civilian honor given by the United States. And that happened in 2015 with a wonderful ceremony at the US Capitol. So let's say the Monuments Men Foundation has 2 phases. It has this first phase that lasts 10 years from 2007 until about 2017 with Robert at the head of it. And then it has a second phase that has seen me as a president the last couple of years, where the mission has expanded to continuing the mission of the Monuments Men. And what is that mission? It's the finding of the works of art still missing since the end of the war and returning them to the rightful owners. And that is maybe the main component of our work presently. I was kind of curious how, given all the potential kind of places to look and so forth, what the foundation or what you found to be kind of effective in terms of focusing in on a particular problem and actually getting results, because there have been some amazing successes, I know. Yes, well, certainly there are hundreds of thousands of works of art missing, and it's where are they? That's the big question. And so the way the foundation works, as opposed to us looking for what is missing, we make sure that everybody out there knows what is missing, so that, and we give them a tool who to call us when they are in doubt. And so we work the opposite way. Rather than look for something, we wait for people to come to us with objects that they have that they either they know have a direct wartime connection, or they were wondering if they do have, and then we help with the research to establish that and determine if indeed they belong to someone else. Who are those owners, and who should this object or work of art document, who should it return to? Do you see a difference between dealing with cases, particularly in the Nazi context, and maybe the whole question more broadly? In other words, is like the kind of focus that so many people have on the Nazi era. Do you think that affects how these cases are resolved differently than maybe questions of provenance in general?
I think that we're probably in the 7th inning or so addressing restitution issues concerning Nazi-related looted objects, and we're probably in the 1st inning addressing not necessarily restitution, but issues of cultural provenance and cultural ownership, as we have more and more countries kind of come to the communal table, in particular countries in Africa. And so many of their works of art and cultural treasures aren't there. They're in other museums, and they're trying to find ways to convey the history of their country to their own people. And it's going to generate, it has generated, is going to continue to generate tremendously interesting ethical questions about where these things are. We see it less as a matter of blame or trying to point fingers at people, and more a matter of a world that's trying to move more towards laws, try overall to avoid killing each other, and get along. And it's in everyone's best interest for these countries to have their people be connected to their cultural history. And I think there are going to have to be some accommodations. I hope there are accommodations made, but we can learn a lot from what's happened with the Nazi-related era. And the thing that really has transformed that arena was the creation of the internet, because in years prior to that, there were all sorts of skirting of rules and laws by museums, art dealers, collectors, who looked the other way, put paintings in trunks of cars, drove them across borders to avoid export limitations, ignored provenance. I mean, provenance in the 1950s up until the 90s really was looked at as a way to get more money from selling something. Michael Jackson owned it. Elizabeth Taylor owned it. No one really paid any attention to it as a potential liability. Yeah. The internet changed all that, because now, instead of Michael Jackson or Elizabeth Taylor, it could have been Adolf Hitler or Hermann Goering or Heinrich Himmler. And there's a liability associated with that. Someone else might have owned it. And in our law, generally speaking, no passage of time can change the character of the theft. So if it was stolen, saying that if you live in the United States, well, I didn't know, is not an adequate defense. And now the records of the monuments men and women, which were seen as an interesting artifact of history, we now know those are the reports of the first detectives on the scene of the greatest theft in history. And that's how we use them. So it's a real transformation in our understanding of how we've arrived at this point, and I think can be instructional about what we do in the future.
I wondered if you could speak about kind of your sense of how, whether the actions that are being taken today are they helping, or is there still more to be done, or how you see that?
I think there's great progress in some areas, and I think I think some people in some museums will, to paraphrase Charlton Heston's immortal line about control of guns, will go to their grave clutching these things and have no intention of letting go of them. And they don't give a damn about what happened. They just don't. Yeah. That's a very sad observation, but that's been the experience that we've had. There are museums in Texas that have that attitude that, I don't give a damn what the circumstances were. We're not giving it up, and we'll resort to technical defenses to try and keep it, skipping over what the underlying facts are. And there are also examples of tremendous grace. The Kimbell Art Museum, as an example, in 2006 had a painting by Lord Turner that was stolen from a Jewish family in Nice, France. And the family years later was searching for it. They identified it hanging at the Kimbell. They wrote the Kimbell and provided the paperwork that they had on it. And the Kimbell looked at it without involving law firms and circling the wagons and said, "You're right. It's yours. Come get it." Yeah. And not only did they return the picture to the family, of course, with 11 heirs and one object, couldn't cut it up. So they sold it. Yeah. And the Kimbell purchased it. And it's now one of the more popular pictures at the museum, because so many people that go to look at works of art. And that's the example that we would hope more and more museums would adopt. And it's something I hope private collectors will, rather than being kind of whatever about it, it isn't going to happen it'll happen, but it's going to happen to my heirs because I'm going to be dead. Yeah. I disdain that view. I hope that they're incented to do the right thing and think, well, I did acquire these works of art in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever it is. And I'm not sure about those things, but we should check. We have an obligation to check. Yeah. I think we as a society, as a globe, are coming to grips with some of these things, embracing that which is good, asking a lot of questions that didn't get asked before the tools were created about how best to use them. ways that maybe they're not helpful, and so on, and dealing with the consequences of them. And one of the consequences, which is a good thing, is it's democratized information and allowing people that don't have resources to hire attorneys or have to travel to look for works of art that were looted from their family by being able to look for these things online. But for that to work, that's kind of the model of this Washington Principles it was agreed to. For that to work, there's a common internet portal that museums were supposed to post any information they had, all information they had on any work of art that they're not sure where it was between 1932 and 1946, but it could have been in Europe. And there are a lot of works and a lot of museums, not even to mention private collections, that fall in that category. The compliance on the part of museums is really disappointing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the excuse is, well, it costs money to do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to have sympathy for an institution if they have $100 million budget that they can't allocate money for at least an intern to do some of the basic research, because it's just not okay that, if you have a multi-million-dollar budget, yes, you couldn't say, well, we're sorry we got robbed last week, but we didn't have enough money for security system. Clearly, you have to allocate funds to do that. It's indefensible. I think not allocating funds to provenance research is equally indefensible. So these are things which are catching up to the technology. And that's some of the challenge, and the role of the foundation, I think, is to shine the spotlight on this and bring visibility and make it not okay anymore for museums or private collectors that just don't want to do the work for whatever reason to get engaged and do it.
I wondered if you could speak a bit about kind of how you see the state of that field in terms of research and where you think it can or should be going kind of from here.
Well, one of the strengths of the foundation that I think makes our small team incredibly strong is the multidisciplinarity of its components. So we have an art historian, we have a conservator, we have a military historian, we have a specialist in legal terms and that worked at one of the major auction houses. When you combine all of these expertise, that's when you have a strong approach to provenance research. Provenance research is oftentimes looked at, while it is multidisciplined, it's addressed more from an art historical point of view. Sometimes the importance of the military understanding of what happened in Europe isn't taken into high enough regards, and it's essential to truly understand the dynamics. An understanding of the monuments men and women and how they operated, how their reports were written, how were things photographed, and that is also paramount. Otherwise, you are relying on their reports, but if you don't know how to interpret and read between the lines, then the reports will only tell you so much. Or when you have multiple reports, how do you understand them together? It has to be a team effort because none of us can know everything, and the expertise and knowledge required to properly study the past of certain paintings is so specific that it would be impossible for any one person to reach the expertise required. And that's why our team, when we have our powerhouse meetings, it's a beauty to witness. Sometimes we think like we would like to just kind of be outside and watch us discussing, because everybody brings such a different level of discussion and perspective, but that is what then makes us reach conclusions, that our conclusions are bulletproof in so many ways, because they have been tackled from so many different directions that we try to really not leave any stone unturned. So that's what I would think of the current state of approach of provenance. It's great. There is certainly a visible improvement from the past years. I think every year there are more conferences, there's dialogue more. During the pandemic, there were so many online seminars to follow that it was almost hard to pick which one. So the dialogue is great, but I do think it has to be approached from a like step back a little bit and get the global picture more.
Also, I would just add, too oftentimes the focus on those that have something that they shouldn't have are trying to look for these technical defenses of how they can keep it. So you're starting off with the answer to the question and then going back and constructing the information to get the answer that you want.
Yeah.
And what's lost in all that is and Anna used the right phrase, the moral arc.
Yeah.
And that is a fancy way of saying perspective. Is it possible that a Jew could have a transaction selling something to Adolf Hitler or his art dealer that we could find a way to consider an arm's length transaction? I would just argue, although there's always exceptions, the basic answer is no. That is never going to be a level playing field. It's just not. And you're going to come tell me, well, they really wanted to sell it to me?
Yeah.
I mean, you can take that one to the Supreme Court, but you better not take it to the People's Court because they ain't buying it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mentality of where I think a 40-year-old museum director, man or woman, looks at it and thinks, that can't be right.
Yeah.
But some people that are more my age that have been dealing with this all along and are familiar with the Nazi subject feel like, well, my attorneys tell me blah, blah, blah. I don't care what the attorneys say. And I do care about what the law, we're a country of laws. We're moving more and more towards a world of laws, as uneven as that happens. But it's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right. And that's what we're all about. We're not a Jewish organization. We don't have a dog on the hunt. We're not against museums. We're not for private collectors. We're not against auction houses. In a sense, we're agnostic. What we are supportive of are what are the facts? And what are the specific facts that we can document? And what does the big picture look like? And we're constantly, like a lens on a camera, zooming in and then pulling back out to look at the big picture, and like a sonar on a submarine, pinging this thing to make sure we've got that right. And then we bring in, as Anna said, all the different disciplines of understanding languages. We have multilingual and multinational people on our team. So a German can look at documents that may have been translated during the war and read them in German to make sure they were translated properly. Make sure there's nothing lost in that translation. Anna does that with documents that are in Italian. I bring a collector's eye to looking at works of art and understanding, well, that doesn't make sense. A restorer wouldn't do that in relining a picture. So those labels must exist somewhere, but that's something that a collector would know about. So we try and make sure each element that are pieces to a puzzle is represented in the people on our team so that we don't leave any stone unturned. We're not perfect, but these are what Anna described, wanting to be a fly on the wall to witness. They're incredibly exhilarating meetings, but they're excruciating because everyone checks the ego at the door and there isn't a boss. And we're all trying to get to the right answer. And who is more right or less right, or who thinks of something is irrelevant, and everyone knows that. And so there's a lot of vigorous debate about things because we're trying to make sure we get it right.
Do you think the necessary laws are sort of in place to do what's needed, or are there kind of gaps that you think might be something that should be addressed by political leaders or something like that?
Well, there are problems. There's no question about it. And one answer doesn't fit all situations because every country has different laws. In Europe, generally speaking, even though the laws vary from country to country in Europe, it's possible for someone to have legal possession of an object, but they don't have clear title to it.
Yeah.
And they can't sell it in the United States, and they can't sell it in Great Britain. So that Sotheby's and Christie's are out as a sales outlet, because if those things were in our countries, you would have possession, but you would have possession illegally because you do not have good title to it.
Yeah.
So we have to find ways to work around that. And this is the foundation. Our successes work best with people of goodwill. And as General Eisenhower said, the true mark of leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it.
Yeah.
Getting people to do stuff because you force them to do it or beat them over the head, as he referred to it, is assault. So, you know, there's a way that works and a way that doesn't. But if the general public speaks up and says, I don't want to be financial supporter or donor of a museum that is going to be proud to have a work of art on the wall that was stolen during the war that has suspect background,
Yeah.
I guarantee you that museum is going to start to get with the program and start paying more attention to this and be a better citizen than they are. It's absolutely going to happen. And that's what we're trying to do, is agitate those systems and get the stakeholders, whether they're visitors, board members, trustees, et cetera, employees, to speak up and speak out and change that.
Absolutely. Well, finally, I just saw on the website, I think this brilliant idea, the set of playing cards that the foundation's produced to help kind of spread the word and get people's eyes on some of these works of art. I wondered if you could just tell us about that set and kind of where the idea came from and how it's worked.
Sure. Yes, we're very proud of it. It took 2 years of work to make it happen because a lot of research went into it. So we took the idea came from one of our board members, and then we fine-tuned it as a team. And that was to use this legacy of the US Army of using decks of playing cards to familiarize soldiers with a specific subject. And we thought, why not apply this concept to works of art that are still missing, so that we can familiarize 54 works of art at a time. Hopefully it will make more decks with at least 54 of the hundreds of thousands of works of art still missing. We established some strict criteria. For instance, the works of art featured are all, they all have, we have a reason to believe they survived the war. In other words, we didn't waste any one car space to feature a work of art that we have every reason to believe burned or was destroyed. And the works of art, the whereabouts are unknown. We might know they're in a private collection, and some of them have resurfaced on the market in the 70s and 80s. In that context, where Robert explained earlier, nobody was really paying attention. But yes, these are the cards, and there is very little information that could fit in the card. But on our website, we have extended provenance for each of the work of art. That, like I said earlier, we spent a lot of time researching the provenance, tackling from all of the different directions, and updating the information that some of these legal representatives have in their files, but they're out of date. The internet has brought more information up, and because we researched it so recently, what we have now is as up to date as information and as there is out there.
The cards are made by Bicycle, and they are actual playing cards, so people can use them. And Anna, how do people get a hold of them?
They're available right now on our website and at the National World War II Museum, which is we have a wonderful relationship with the museum in New Orleans, our nation's official World War II museum. And they are in the final stages of building a permanent gallery about the monuments men and women, so that their efforts will be forever remembered, and more than 700,000 visitors go through the rooms of the museum. So we are excited to have this further piece of our puzzle of raising awareness close to completion. And one of the final room of this exhibition will mention the works of art that are still missing and out there. So this project ties very well to one of the aspects brought forward by the exhibition.
So monumentsmenfoundation.org.
Fantastic. What a great idea. Well, Anna Bottinelli and Robert Edsel, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Ben.
you, Ben. Thanks for having us.